Welcome into the television version of Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. I'm delighted that you've tuned in and joined with us today here on Strategies for Living, where we're all about helping us live healthier, happier, more peaceful lives in our bodies, in our minds, in our spirits, and our relationships here in the 21st century. And we do that by engaging in important conversations with folks we like to call life strategists each and every time that we do Strategies for Living. And sometimes we have characters. Oh, no, wait a minute. You're not exactly talking about a character in that way, are you, Wayne Hogue?
Not exactly.
No, but you are talking about leaders of character. And we're going to talk about that with you today. Welcome, Wayne Hogue, to Strategies for Living. And Wayne is our life strategist today. He's passionate about leadership and character. And we'll talk about those today. He's the author of Elements of Leaders of Character. So we're going to talk a lot about character today. Thank you for coming and welcome to Strategies for Living. So when somebody says that David, he's a character, that's not necessarily what you're talking about.
Not even close.
Not even close. Okay. So let's start with, Wayne, how you became interested in leadership and character that led to the writing of this book, and it's a good one.
Good. The book originally, I started writing it probably in about 2007. And it actually was intended to be a textbook for an introduction to leadership college class. I had been given the task of creating a leadership program at LSUS, and the first thing
became quite a popular class.
It was the most incredible program, anything I've ever been a part of. But the first thing I had to do was to teach the very first class, and it was Introduction to Leadership. And
go out and try to find a textbook, and there was none, right?
I searched and searched, and I couldn't find a textbook that I was comfortable with introducing the idea to college students who may have never been introduced to the idea of leadership.
Right.
So I started creating my own class and my own textbook, and literally that's what grew out of it. The PowerPoints that I created, I lectured on it for a couple of 3 years, and the PowerPoints that I had created were actually the outline of the book. And I started with the PowerPoints and started writing the book, and it probably took another 2 or 3 years to write the book.
How big a problem do we have today, government, business, in leadership? Because, you know, if you listen to the media has said we're going to heck in a handbasket for a long time.
Right.
How big a problem today is leadership, and specifically leadership with character?
Right. Along the way in this process of developing the leadership program at LSUS and writing this book and all the subsequent things that I've done, you know, since then, my ideas kind of evolved as well, and I became more and more aware of the situation that the world is in, and especially here in Shreveport-Bossier. And I started seeing something in my college students that was phenomenal, in that there was something in their life almost missing. And I think it was because, you know, when you and I grew up, it was, you know, being part of the Bible Belt, you know, and I got the belt a lot more than I got the Bible. But we were forced, you know, into this church or you know, spirituality or whatever as much as anything. And I don't think the kids are growing up like that today. And so there's something missing that I started seeing. And so as I was writing a leadership book and a leadership class, what actually became more apparent was it's hard to teach leadership, but I could sure help them become the kind of person I want out there leading. And so that's where the character component came in.
How would you define character? I mean, we've joked a little bit about it, but how do you define a leader? What are the elements of a leader of character?
All right. The two words in that phrase, leader and character, two different things.
Okay.
A leader in the context of this book is somebody who chooses to influence other people, to step up and lead.
So any one of us can be a leader. We could have everyone watching
Absolutely.
right now, could be everyone in this studio
Absolutely.
is potentially a leader.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that opens the discussion to everybody. So if you step
See, that's
up,
one of the things I learned from your book that I mean, because I think when we say leader, it's like our brain goes to, well, that's the president.
Right.
Or that's the chancellor of this university.
Right.
But that's not me. Or that's even the teacher of this of a particular class.
Right.
But that's not me. And you're saying, oh, yes, it is.
Right. As a matter of fact, probably the biggest headache I've had is separating the myth of what leadership is and what it is not. And that's probably the first thing I addressed in the book, is in most higher education, leadership is taught by the College of Business. Well, it's because there's this idea that leadership and management are the same thing. They have absolutely nothing to do with anything. And anybody who's been around a while, you can look back on some of the places you've worked, and you
We
will
all
probably
know managers that weren't necessarily great leaders.
Right.
They may have been characters,
Right.
but didn't have any character.
Right. And the people who had the most influence are hardly ever actually the boss. If you think about it, it's the old guard or the one who's been around the longest and all that thing. And you know, we think about, and you mentioned the president. Well, we also have this habit of equating politicianship, and for lack of a better word,
Right.
as leadership.
Right.
Has absolutely nothing to do with leadership. And in the military, and I go to all the military academies all the time, and so there's a lot of military influence in this because the military has been teaching leadership longer than anybody. They also confuse it with officership.
Right.
And so I spend a lot of time separating the word leadership from all of those other ships or whatever to bring it to a definition that a young adult can understand it and know that it means them.
Early in the book, you talk about leaders and leadership, and you talk about some superstars. What are you talking about, superstars?
Well, that's the people who step up and put themselves out there, open to ridicule and risk and rejection and everything because they're standing up for what's right.
So no matter where you are, whether you're in the classroom, whether you're in a university, whether you're on a church board, whatever you're doing,
Whether you're at home. to
to step up and to put yourself into a place where you're saying, hey, look at this, you put yourself into a state of vulnerability is what you're saying.
And this is what's right. Here's the problem that I've seen with my college students. We all know what peer pressure is. Well, I always ask them the question, have you ever felt positive peer pressure, or is it always negative? Well, it's nearly always negative. You know, nobody ever said, no, don't drink that beer, you know, or no, don't smoke that cigarette, whatever.
Right.
It's always, hey, try this, you know. So truth of the matter is, young people are inundated with pressure to maybe not do exactly the right thing. But the truth is, when you start digging down into their lives, you find out that there's a lot of them. Not all of them, but there is a lot of them that are dying for somebody to step up and say, you know what, this is not right. This is what we ought to be doing. And that carries over to every facet of their life. So it's not just about them and their life, it's about every part of their life.
Absolutely. All right, do we have a problem today? Is there a lack of leadership, and particularly leaders with character today?
I think you could say we do. And you know, I hate to generalize across this entire, you know, world, but I don't know if it's any worse or better than it's ever been, but I know it could be better than it is.
So, in other words, you're saying no matter how bad we judge today's leaders, we've always had this issue
Right.
of character in leadership capacity.
Right.
Am I getting
You're
that right?
Exactly right.
All right. So, how do you define character?
Okay, character in this instance is everything about you that I don't see. It's all of the traits, the attributes, practices, and principles that make you who you really are. So the best definition of character is who you truly are without me seeing you. So and in the book I list about 37 different elements of character, basically.
What would be some of those ones?
The ones I think that have the biggest impact on your life are responsibility, compassion, honor, honesty, integrity, morality, and values. Those are the big ones that I harp on the most, especially things like honor and honesty and integrity.
In terms of all of us being able to understand this, can we all develop that? Is this something we're born with? Is this something that we can only get in certain places? If I look at myself and I find myself lacking,
right,
what can I do?
Truth of the matter is, that's a tough question to answer, but here's the answer. And you and I have been in the world long enough that we can look back and know something like morality. And morality is what I truly believe is right and wrong.
Right.
And deep in my heart. It's
right.
It's not what I say, it's what I truly feel. It's very obvious to me at my stage in life that what I believe is right and wrong today is very different than what I believed was right and wrong when I was 16, 17 years old.
So it's an evolutionary process.
It's absolutely. My attitude is different than it was. The way I show respect, my trustworthiness, everything, all of these traits that I talk about as elements, they're different. So if they're different, well, that means we can develop them and make them into whatever we need them to be.
We got to go to break. When we come back from break, can we talk about some of the ways,
absolutely,
practically, that we can develop this? Wayne Hogue is talking to us today. He's our life strategist here on Strategies for Living. He's the author of Elements of Leaders of Character. And we've got more with Wayne Hogue today on Strategies for Living. Stay where you are. We'll be right back.
Whether you're enjoying an ATV, all-terrain vehicle, or an ROV, recreational off-highway vehicle, safety can be as simple as ABC. A. Always wear a proper helmet, eye protection, gloves, long sleeves and pants, sturdy boots, and in an ROV, the seatbelt. B. Ride sober and only on designated trails. C. Get safety trained through the ATV Safety Institute, atvsafety.org, or the Recreational Off-Highway Vehicle Association, rohva.org.
At what age is the color that your skin was meant to be no longer beautiful? Every year, millions of young women try to change the skin they were born with and say they'd die for darker skin. Sadly, some actually do. Melanoma is the second most common cancer in teens and young adults, and one person dies from melanoma every hour. Change your thinking, not your skin. Stop tanning. Learn more at spotskincancer.org. A message from the American Academy of Dermatology.
When a hurricane is approaching, your pets look to their pack leaders to get them out of harm's way. That's you, Luciana, so put a game plan in place before a storm hits. Know where you're going to evacuate to, find if they accept pets, and be sure your pets have the proper identification tags. For more details about caring for pets during a hurricane and shelter information, go to getagameplan.org. So pack leader, get a game plan in place before you need it.
The last few years have been tough in this country, and what it's taught all of us is that there is no one face of hunger. Every day, more than 6 million older Americans face the threat of hunger. They have to skip meals entirely or get by on meals that are deficient in every way. But you can help feed a hungry adult today. Whether you're able to donate time, money, or food, every little bit counts. Go to drivetoendhunger.org. We can end hunger, but we gotta start cooking.
And welcome back. Welcome back into Strategies for Living. I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. You know, you're watching Strategies for Living today on your television, but you know, Strategies for Living is 21 years old, Wayne Hogue, as a radio program. That's where we started, on the radio. We're still there.
Wow.
Station that we started on. Is that leadership, character, or some combination of something else? I don't, yeah.
Longevity.
News Radio 710 Keel, Sunday mornings, 9:05 to 10 is where you can find Strategies for Living, and I hope you will find us and tune into us. You can also find us at strategiesforliving.com. You can find also our column every Saturday in the Shreveport Times, and today we're visiting with Wayne Hogue, and he is the author of a very important book for our day. It's called Elements of Leaders of Character, and you can find him online, leadersofcharacter.com.
Right.
All right, so when we begin to look at some of these elements, Wayne, and let me just mention, you mentioned some of them, but let me mention some others. Attitude, authenticity, behavior, commitment, compassion's one you mentioned, creativity, discipline, honesty, honor, humility, passion, optimism, respect, sacrifice, values, vision, willingness to lead.
Right.
And that just scratches the surface of what you've got in here. So we can actually learn this. This is not something that, you know, maybe that's another myth.
Right.
A leader is born. He or she is a born leader.
Right.
Is that possible?
I think some people are born with more outgoing personalities, but truth of the matter is we're all born at the exact same place. We have no character when we're born, so it comes from somewhere.
Well, if you believe Dr. Freud, we're all id when we're born.
Exactly.
Born.
Right, right.
And so the id is I want what I wanted, and I want it now. That's the ultimate selfishness. If you want to look at that, it's a little infant.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I addressed it like this. For example, two of the most impactful leaders in the history of mankind were Hitler and Mother Teresa.
Whoa! You can't get much different than those two.
Opposite end of the spectrum.
But you're absolutely right. Both of them drew people to them.
They influenced millions.
They influenced, absolutely.
Right. But they started at the exact same place. So that's what got me thinking down the hypothesis that they both started somewhere, and one went one way and one went the other with their character development. If that's true, and we all start at the same place, well, guess what? That means we can go whichever direction we need to go. Now, that's where I go back to the peer pressure thing and societal, Hollywood, everything. They're pulling us, I think, towards a negative side where we need people to pull us more towards the positive side.
This may be a completely unfair question, and if it is, I'll apologize to you in advance. But you've got a lot of these, there's a lot of elements, and I'm assuming in the class that uses this as a textbook, you may go through 2 or 3 of these each class period and really delve into them.
Right.
Here's the unfair question. Is there one of these more important than another one?
I have my favorite. My favorite's honor.
Okay.
And just in short, the reason why honor's my favorite is because it is the most guttural, the most internal. It is how well I live my life by maintaining my honor and living with honor. It's how deeply and solidly I value my character. I value my morality and my ethics and my honesty and all that. So it's almost the foundation to a lot of the other moral type traits. I think the most important element of all of them is persistence. And the reason why is it's funny now that we're all starting to talk more and more about character and I'm in that conversation nationwide. A lot of the schools, the K-12 schools now, are beginning to talk about teaching character traits to young kids. And they've realized that probably one of the most impactful, negatively impactful traits that are missing from a lot of young people is grit. The grit to tough out the math class, or you know, the grit to get up out of bed and turn the Nintendo off and study, or whatever, these kind of things. So there's this new science now in society looking at trying to develop grit and persistence in young people. And you know, we've been around long enough to know that nothing worth a lot is easy.
Absolutely.
You know.
You know, a few years ago, I had the opportunity to visit the Smithsonian and spend a little time there. And there's a part of the Smithsonian that has the presidents and Americana. Right. And there's an ongoing, anyone that goes there can participate in a vote. It's democratic. Who do you think our greatest president is? Right. And it's far and away Abraham Lincoln. Now, there is a toss-up for the second, third, fourth, fifth positions. That changes. Right. But when you were talking about persistence, Abraham Lincoln came into my mind in terms of not only his persistence in seeing through his vision and his mission to save our Union, but also in his earlier life. I think I'm right about this. I think President Lincoln lost an incredible number of elections, maybe 16 or so, and I think that number is the 16th president before he won his first election. Right. And he only won one or two elections and then stood for the presidency.
He was even demoted in the Army.
Yes.
Because he couldn't march his troops through a gate. That story.
That's persistence, though, isn't it?
That's persistence, I'm telling you.
Okay, so again, back to your idea here that this is something that evolves. So Lincoln wasn't always the kind of leader. Maybe when he was in his Army days, we couldn't have asked him to take the presidency and do what he did. Right. But with that persistence, you're saying, with this element, one of these elements, and certainly if we look at him, he had so many of these other elements. But what strikes me is this evolving that you're talking about.
Right. And I use Lincoln a lot. He's one of my heroes. Martin Luther King, a bunch of the historical people that I use for examples. But also, I mean, there's everyday examples. And I tell you, I used this one example that I read one time to describe what I think is probably the most important point in developing your own character. I used to teach entrepreneurship a lot, so I studied successful people a lot. Because I thought, well, if I could figure out what made the Michael Dells or the Bill Gateses, then I'd just copy it and I'd become one too. Sure. And it turns out it's not that easy, but what I did learn along the way is as I read something that one of those guys said, that said, look, and this was somebody who started normal like me, broke, and became super successful. He said, looking back, let me tell you the greatest thing about becoming very, very successful. It's not the money. He said, I have plenty of money, and he said, that's fine too. Right. But he said, the greatest thing is becoming the kind of person it takes to become successful. So in essence, what he said is that he evolved from this normal everyday person to this very successful person, and that was the most important thing to him.
You know, the thing that I am aware of is we've just barely scratched the surface here. We only have about a minute or a minute and a half left. And you, towards the end of the book, talk about living from a code. What are you talking about?
Setting the standard, voicing the standard, and living the standard. That's
setting the standard, voicing the standard, living the standard. Right. Is it important that I write it?
It absolutely helps, because you have to keep yourself on track too. But if you set standards and say, this is how I'm going to live, and you say that out loud, other people will appreciate it. Other people are looking for people to set the standard. And then you go out there and do it. And you live by this code, this honor code, and that's where I got it. The honor codes at most of the military academies and that kind of thing.
And there are many, many more elements. You included the key, I think the key elements, but there are many elements. Right. This book, in many ways, Wayne Hogue, is a thought starter. It's a whack on the side of the head that we very much need today?
It's tapping into an entire science, the character science, that I think we'll probably all see more and more and more of over the years. I think there's going to be a huge focus on this whole idea of character.
So if you would like to dive into it, folks, there's a couple of ways that you can continue this conversation that you and I have begun with Wayne Hogue today. You can go get the book, Elements of Leaders of Character, and it's available. Your favorite bookstore can order it for you if you don't find it there, or you can go on the
Amazon.com.
Amazon.com, called Elements of Leaders of Character, or you can go to leadersofcharacter.com.
Right.
And do you look forward to doing more of this in the future, developing more classes?
I do. I'm going to New York next week to be a speaker at a character development conference up there. So I think we'll probably see this progression of things start happening that I'm proud to be a part of.
We will look forward to you, and as you get more developments, please come back and visit us.
Love to.
Folks, you come back and visit us, and in between time, don't forget strategiesforliving.com. That's the place you can keep up with Strategies for Living, and I hope you will. For Wayne Hogue, I'm marriage and family therapist David McMillan. See you next time here on Strategies for Living.